and I know it. They would never neglect this.
Uh-huh.
Because that's where I graduated from. Yeah, the commencement service was held at Hilda Tabernacle. Although the school was Crystal Baptist High School, and we always went there. And I guess that was an inspiration for accomplishments in life. So we were all there. And my father worked nights most of the time, so he was never available.
Mm-hmm.
When I graduated, he took off from work. And I kind of thought that was special.
Mm.
But I don't know how my brothers and sisters felt about that because he didn't go over there. So there might have been a little feeling there, but we never talked about it. And let's see.
So you never really talked about it. Did you? Was that sort of something that was expected, that you kind of just kept your feelings private, and even like amongst your siblings, you didn't talk about different things like that?
I think it must have been because we didn't discuss it. And I think there might have been feelings from my older sister that Daddy never went to our commencement. But I think it's because I asked him to go. And I wanted him to go, and he took off. I was surprised myself, because he always had a reason why he couldn't go to these nights. But it was in 1952 that I asked him to go. I wanted him to go to the convention. Well, I guess getting some awards or something.
Was there, what was kind of the role of, like, gender roles? How did they differ? How were they separate or established? What was kind of established general roles?
Well, I think my mother was a house mom.
Mm-hmm.
Although she had taught when she first got married, she taught elementary school in New York City. But after she started having a family, that was the end of her working years. Until we grew up, my older brother and sisters and graduated from high school before my mother ever worked again.
So it was acceptable for women to be working and to be independent?
Not as much at that time as it is today. I heard a child say to me while I was teaching, just a few years ago, maybe, I don't think it's been 10 years, he said, "Your mother didn't work?" We were talking about the timeline, things that they experienced as they were growing up. And I said, "Oh, when we would come home from school," I was giving this illustration, my mother would have dinner prepared, and one of the reasons she had it prepared early is because my dad went to work at about 3 o'clock. Well, she would cook dinner, so when we came home, dinner was already ready. Oh, we could smell it, and it was good. And this boy said, "You mean your mother never didn't work?" And I said, "No, she didn't. Not when we were growing up and youngsters in school." He said, "Wow." And that kind of surprised me because I thought, that didn't seem unusual to me.
Mm-hmm.
But when he said it, it made my mind begin to think, well, maybe everybody didn't not work. Every mother didn't work. But I suppose their mothers were younger when they started to school or were in elementary school than mine, because my parents were older when they married and started families. So it was all in perspective. Their parents were younger, and I know some of my friends in school, parents were younger, but I don't think they were, because they were very active parent-teacher association parents. And my mother was there. She would make costumes for May Day and anything that went on, we got to take part in that. And my mother was right there, so that wasn't unusual. But when I think about it, these girls' parents didn't work, and I guess that was the factor that women worked outside the home had not started. I think it must have been during the war when it really started, World War II, and a lot of younger women worked in the war. But my parents were older than their parents. My father was too old to go to war, World War One. He was too young to go to World War One, and then when he got to World War Two, he was married and had family, so he didn't have to go to World War Two either.
That's good. Well, I know you've been mentioning some things about what it was growing up and having these values instilled in you and how the women in your life influenced you. Can you tell me a little bit about the stories that you remember from your mother and grandmother passing down about teaching you how to be a lady?
Well, I think the main factor is that you were never not boisterous, loud. Ladies were always soft-spoken. That kind of carried over most of my life, I could say. Most of my life. And when I got older, even before I finished college, I was had a Sunday school class of teenagers, and I kind of gently instructed them in that same way that a lady was, soft-spoken, courteous, not loud, um, very reserved, more so than anything. And that is not the thing today, very much at all. There may be a few people that observe that.
That's very true. How do
because I even say that about my own daughter. I
Yes,
think she's
Sybil's very outspoken, very loud.
Very different to myself growing up.
Yeah.
I would never say to my mother probably what she would say to me. I don't agree with that. I don't see it that way. Yeah. If it's anything that come to her mind, she tell it to you.
Is that necessarily a bad thing?
No, it really wasn't. And she wasn't being ugly about it. She was just opinionated, and she felt like she could speak it and help me to understand her because she didn't always agree with what I thought. Right.
So how do you think, what advice would you give to my generation for kind of, for young women to kind of restore some sense of that ladylike grace and,
I still think it's in order today, although I see it going the opposite way. I still think there's nothing wrong with it. The generations have just changed.
Mm-hmm.
I think I can't be critical, but I just think parents should probably have a little more, instruct them a little differently, so that they just won't do it like a olive branch or something like that. And I grew up, the church was the center of our life.
Mm-hmm.
And when I ran into children in school, we had style shows. And I would say, now you've made this lovely suit. You should wear just some little heels. These were high school girls. Don't you have any little pumps? And she said, no, and I could not believe that. And I would ask it in a different way. And so finally some of the other girls would look at me and say, Miss Rose, she does not go to church. She doesn't And that surprised me. Because even when I was in high school or starting at elementary school, you had clothes that you wore to church.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's like best clothes.
Yeah, shoes that you would wear to church.
And you knew how to dress up. You were taught how to dress up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And when we had style shows before those latter years in high school, I would bring hats to school when we had style shows, hats and gloves, and the girls would put on my hats and things and model them with dress-up clothes that they had made at school. And it was just a fun thing. And they would be excited about it. They would say, "Oh, we'll wear this hat." They could pick. I'd bring several hats, so they could pick that. So I could see the change in, I guess, wearing apparel
Mhm.
and conduct, because we would have teas, and sometimes they wouldn't have a dress-up dress to be able to wear to the tea and be the hostess. It's so different. And when I had teachers working in my department who would have girls working at the tea table with a pair of jeans on, I just thought that was. But the girls are not used to getting to sit at the tea table and pour the tea or the coffee
Mhm.
in an attire like that. I never said anything to them. I would say, "Did you tell them what to wear?" I'd ask the teacher, "Did you tell them what to wear if I see them in something?" She said, "They said they didn't have anything to wear." So she wouldn't. But I felt differently about it. I thought, this is the only way they'll learn
Mhm.
what they should and should not wear on certain occasions. But the younger teachers didn't feel that way.
Yeah.
I think they still need it because they don't get it at home. Some parents knew not anything about it because no one taught them.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, I kind of thought school was a place for them to learn a lot of things about life and being a lady.
Mhm.
And other teachers had different ideas, and I found that difference in myself and them because they were quite a bit younger.
Mhm. Yeah, I
And
think.
and it's different now. I would not want to be teaching now. I
Yeah.
don't think I could. Cars.
I can't see you enjoying that. There's a huge spectrum change
Yeah,
difference
it
in
really is. I
how
realize that.
young ladies connect themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think what you're saying brings up a important point of that some of these more traditional values that were kind of the norm, for most of the time, in our country's history, have been kind of let go, but at the same time, people haven't been taught today
Right.
that it's important to know how to present yourself and to have personal hygiene and to
Right.
kind of just.
We dealt with the whole 9 yards.
Mhm.
Everything that I felt like they needed as a young lady, I would incorporate that in our classroom. Um,
Can you give me a couple of examples of that?
well, maybe just entering the classroom, speaking to the teacher. And I was kind of an old-fashioned teacher. I stood at my door. I wasn't a union member. I wasn't concerned about it. I put in 10 minutes here when I was supposed to have 10 minutes break between classes. I'd be standing on the door, and I would say good morning, and I would expect them to say good morning to Miss Earl, Mrs. Roll,
Mhm.
or Miss Phyllis, and that's what I grew up hearing and seeing, and that's what I would try to emulate as a good teacher,
Mhm.
acceptable teacher. And
So, with a lot of the texts that we've been reading, there is this important theme of things being passed down through the generations. So, as